There's a small town in the Midwest, tucked between cornfields and long stretches of empty highway. It's the kind of place where everyone knows each other's business, where the diner still serves black coffee for $1, and the church bells mark time better than any clock. On the edge of that town is a stretch of land nobody touches, a husk of blackened trees, dead earth, and brittle weeds. Locals call it the burn. More than 100 years ago, a fire tore through there, so fierce it left the soil poisoned. Nothing grows back, not even weeds. They say that patch of land belongs to her, the mother of ashes. She's seen at dusk, drifting through the dead trees, with an infant wrapped in gray cloth. Her face is always blurred by smoke, as though the fire that killed the forest is still burning behind her skin. And though her steps are silent, the sound of her baby's crying carries across the fields. Parents warn their children, if you hear the crying, don't follow, don't answer, because those who do are found at dawn, lying in the dirt, with their mouths stuffed with soot, as though something smothered them in silence. That's the story. The kind people whisper at church picnics or on long drives past the burn. But for some families in town, it isn't just a story. It's memory. Part 1. My grandmother was the first to tell me. I was 12, sitting in her kitchen, watching fireflies blink against the dark fields outside. She had a way of speaking, calm even, that made even the strangest things sound like they belonged to everyday life. She was a mother like any other, Grandma said, twisting her wedding band as she talked. Her husband went off to fight in the Great War and never came back. She raised her baby alone in a cabin on the edge of the burn. Folks said they didn't have much, but she loved that child with her whole soul. I leaned closer, waiting. Grandma's stories always had a turn, and I could feel it coming. One winter night, the fire came. No one knows how it started. By the time the neighbors saw the smoke, the cabin was already burning. They said she ran back inside, screaming the baby's name. And when the roof collapsed, everyone thought they'd both gone with it. Grandma's eyes flicked to the window, out toward the dark strip of land past the fields. But then the crying started. Not from the ruins, from the forest itself. A baby's cry. Thin, pitiful, and people swore they saw her, drifting between the burned trees, rocking something in her arms. She lowered her voice, barely above a whisper, and every time she appeared, a child from town died before morning. Not just dead, their lungs were full of ash. Part 2. The strange thing about the Mother of Ashes is that her appearances were never the same. Some folks swore they only heard the baby, a faint, reedy cry, drifting across the fields when the sky went that particular shade of bruised purple just before nightfall. Others claimed they saw her with their own eyes, a woman in gray, walking the blackened earth, the bundle in her arms twitching, as though the infant inside were alive. But there were darker stories too. One came from the old church records, back when the burn was still fresh. A minister wrote in the margins of his sermon notes that a young couple woke one morning to find their toddler missing from his crib. The door was locked, the windows barred, and yet the child was gone. They found him a mile out, lying on the edge of the burn, his skin pale, lips blackened as if from smoke. In the dirt beside him were faint marks, like the shape of a woman's knees pressed into the ground, as though she had knelt there, rocking something. Another story belonged to the county midwife. She claimed a woman came to her in the night, desperate, begging for medicine because her newborn wouldn't stop coughing. The midwife said she hurried to fetch her coat, but when she turned back, the woman was gone, vanished into the night with the child still choking in her arms. The baby was never seen again. Some said that was the Mother of Ashes, testing the town's kindness. And then there was the oldest tale of all, one my grandmother leaned closer to tell me, her voice barely more than breath. They say if you hear her baby cry, you must never answer, not even to whisper a prayer, because if she thinks you've heard her, if she knows you're listening, she'll remember your name, and she'll come back for your bloodline, one child at a time, until it ends. Grandma crossed herself then, quick and sharp, and I noticed her hand trembled. Part 3. Some families in town still whisper that the Mother of Ashes marked them, that their line was chosen or cursed the night the cabin burned. The McCarthys were the first. My grandmother told me about them with a grim kind of finality, as though she believed every word. The McCarthys had 6 children. After the fire, the first 3 didn't make it past infancy. Each one found cold in their cribs, their tiny lips dusted with gray powder that no doctor could explain. The surviving children grew up pale and sickly, always coughing, as if smoke still lived inside their lungs. It wasn't just them. The Coles lost twins the same night they claimed to hear crying in the cornfields. The baby girls were buried in coffins so small the men dug their graves with spades instead of shovels. And then there were the Harrisons, who swore that every time one of their daughters reached her first birthday, the mother would come for her. By the 1950s, the Harrisons had left town altogether, moving west. They said it was for opportunity. But the old-timers knew better. They were running. Yet even running doesn't help. One of the strangest stories was about a boy named Tommy Dunn, who grew up in Chicago decades after his family left the burn behind. He was 7 when he suffocated in his sleep. The coroner wrote it off as a medical condition, but when they opened his lungs, they were blackened with ash. The family had never spoken of the legend, never even told Tommy the old story, but blood remembers. That's what the elders said. And as Grandma looked at me with those steady eyes, I couldn't help but notice how her voice lingered a moment too long on our own family name. Part 4. The older I got, the more I realized every family in town had their own version of the Mother of Ashes. The stories passed around at kitchen tables and summer bonfires weren't always the same, but they all carried that same note of unease, the kind that settles deep in the bones. The Wilkins family swore she could only cross your threshold if you'd heard the crying and chosen to ignore it. Their great-aunt claimed she once heard a baby wailing outside her window and refused to get up. By morning, her own child was gone, found in the barn with black soot under his fingernails, as though he'd been clawing at the dirt, trying to breathe. The Mendez family told it differently. Their version said the Mother of Ashes wasn't punishing people for ignoring the cry, but for answering it. One cousin told me that in the 70s, his mother had leaned out her window when she heard the sound of an infant sobbing at night. She whispered, "Hush now, little one." By sunrise, her newborn daughter was dead in her crib, face dusted gray. Then there was the Miller family, who added another layer to the legend. They believed she followed blood, but only certain kinds. She marks the firstborn. Old Mr. Miller used to say, sitting in his rocker outside the gas station. Always the firstborn, the one she never got to raise. In their family history, it was true. Generation after generation, the first child never lived past infancy. One baby lost to fire leaves an appetite that never ends. and still more versions spread. Some said the crying in the burn was a warning, meant to drive children away from danger. Others swore it was a lure, that the sound wasn't even the child, but the mother herself, calling out, testing who would listen. Different voices, different stories, but the ending was always the same. A baby dies, and the ashes spread. Part 5. For a long time I thought the stories were just that. Stories. Something passed down, stretched and twisted over the years, like a quilt patched together from scraps. But then I started hearing whispers about newer accounts, fresh ones, like the Hendricks family. In 2003, their youngest son, Caleb, told his mother he kept hearing a baby crying outside his bedroom window at night. She laughed it off, told him it was probably cats in the fields. But a week later, Caleb's little sister was found unresponsive in her crib. The doctor called it SIDS. The Hendrickses didn't argue, but the mother never opened that bedroom window again. Or the case of a teenager named Jenna, who swore she saw a woman walking along the burn on her way home from a football game. She described her in perfect detail, the grey cloth, the bundle in her arms. But what made her story different was that she claimed the woman wasn't walking through the ashes. She was floating a few inches above them, her infant's cries echoing from everywhere at once. The sheriff chalked it up to beer and imagination, but Jenna didn't drink. And then there was the strangest account of all, a woman in her 30s, not even from town, driving the highway late one October night. She stopped for gas at the station near the burn, and later told the clerk she saw smoke moving through the trees, not like fog, but thick, coiling, almost alive, and beneath it, a woman's lullaby, soft, broken, carrying on the wind. She left without buying anything, drove straight through the night, and never came back. The clerk still swears about that one. He told me himself, leaning across the counter with a cigarette burning low between his fingers. His eyes were dead serious. "She's still here," he said. "You don't have to believe me, but she's still here." Part 6. Not everyone in town believes, of course. For every whispered story about the Mother of Ashes, there's someone ready to scoff. The high school history teacher, Mr. Carver, says the legend is nothing more than collective trauma. "There really was a fire," he told my class once, "and in a town that small, every family lost someone." People create stories when they can't explain their grief. He leaned on his desk and smirked, like that was the end of it. Others chalk the crying sounds up to nature. Barn owls, they say, or coyotes with their strange, high-pitched wails. Animals can sound like babies when you're tired, when you're scared. The sheriff likes to remind anyone who files a late-night report. Brains play tricks, especially in the dark. And the deaths, they always have a cause, the skeptics insist. SIDS, congenital lung defects, childhood pneumonia. Tragedies, yes, but explainable ones. "We didn't have good doctors 100 years ago," one nurse told me. "Back then, every sick child was a ghost story." That's the way outsiders like to frame it anyway. But the trouble is, explanations don't always fit. Like the Hendricks boy who heard crying right before his sister died. The coroner listed SIDS, but the ashes on her pillow couldn't be explained away. Or the Cole twins, buried 50 years apart, both firstborn daughters, both lungs black with soot, despite living in different states. Or the gas station clerk's story. Because when he told it, he wasn't trying to scare me. His hand shook too much when he lit his cigarette. His eyes stayed fixed on the trees beyond the road, like he was afraid the smoke might start moving again. Skeptics will keep talking, sure. They always do. But in this town, belief runs deeper than reason. And when night falls over the burn, it's not the owls or coyotes that keep parents awake. It's the thought of hearing that infant cry and wondering if their family's next. Part 7. Every town legend has its signs, things people swear are proof she's near. Little warnings left behind like breadcrumbs. For the mother of ashes, it's always soot. Parents whisper that if you find a dusting of ash on your child's bed sheets, just a fine gray smear, the kind you might mistake for dirt, you should pack your bags and leave. No one ever says where to go, just away. Because the next time you see it, it won't be a warning. It'll be the end. Others claim she leaves prints, not of feet, but of knees, small indents in the dirt beneath a child's window, as though she knelt there in the night, rocking her infant. A farmer swore he found those marks outside his house in the 1960s in perfectly dry ground. No rain, no reason for the soil to give way. He moved his family the same week. And then there's the sound. Not just the crying, though that's what most speak of, but the lullaby. A faint, cracked tune like an old record player skipping. Folks say if you hear it, you have to resist the urge to listen too closely, because if you catch the words, if you understand even one line, you've already been claimed. Good night, flame. Night child. One woman told my grandmother that she woke in the night to the smell of smoke. She ran to check the stove, the wiring, but everything was fine. It wasn't until she went into the nursery that she found the ashes scattered across the crib mattress. The baby still breathing, but gray dust clinging to his lips. He survived that night, but the family left town within the month, swearing they could still smell smoke in his hair, no matter how often they washed it. Ash, kneeling prints, a broken lullaby. No one needs convincing here. Everyone has heard the warnings. Everyone knows the signs. And everyone prays never to see them. Part 8. Every place with a curse breeds its own rituals. In our town, they're as common as church on Sundays. The most obvious is the salt line. Old women still insist on pouring thick rings of it around cribs, muttering prayers as they do. Not the Lord's Prayer, either, but older things, strange words, passed down from grandmothers who barely spoke English when they arrived. The kind of words that taste bitter on the tongue. Others burn cedar in the house. They say the smoke keeps her smoke away. You'll still catch that smell drifting from porches on summer nights, thick and sharp. The flames burning in rusted coffee cans by the windows. And then there's the lullaby rule. Parents here won't sing their babies to sleep, not a single song. They'll hum, rock, whisper soothing words, but never sing. Because once she knows your voice, they say, she can answer back. The strangest ritual comes from the farmers. Whenever a child is born, the family buries a jar of milk and honey the edge of their land. A gift, they say, for the mother of ashes. Something sweet to distract her, to keep her from hungering for the infant inside the house. But no one ever agrees if these things work, because for every child kept safe, there's another who isn't. Like the Johnson baby in the 80s, his parents salted every window, burned cedar nightly, buried their jar in the yard. They followed every rule, every tradition. But one night they woke to silence. The baby gone still in his crib, a black smear across his lips. The defenses give comfort, nothing more. And maybe that's all they were ever meant to give. Part 9. Outsiders never take the ritual seriously. When the highway was expanded in the 90s, construction crews stayed at motels in town. They'd watch the locals sprinkling salt on their porches or burning cedar on their lawns and laugh about it over beers. Hillbilly witchcraft, they called it. One night, a crew chief named Frank joked about it at the bar. He mimicked the women pouring salt, pretended to rock a baby in his arms, crooning some made-up lullaby off-key. The locals didn't laugh, they just went quiet, every head turning away, as though ignoring him might undo the damage. Frank died that week. Heart failure, the report said. But people still talk about how he was found, slumped in his motel bed, mouth packed with a black grit the coroner couldn't explain. His co-workers never came back for the funeral. They didn't even collect his things. Then there was the couple from Chicago who bought land near the burn, planning to build a summer house. They laughed at the warnings, rolled their eyes when a neighbor offered to show them the milk and honey ritual. They didn't last a month. The wife told a friend she kept waking at night to a sound like a baby crying outside their half-built house. The husband swore he saw smoke moving through the trees, even on clear, still nights. They sold the land at a loss and fled. The frame of the house still stands, rotting, the wood streaked gray as though brushed by ash. And then there are the ones who stay silent, tourists passing through, truckers stopping for gas, hikers who take the wrong trail. They come in scoffing at the talk, but leave with their faces pale, their voices low. Some legends you don't have to believe in, for them to believe in you. Part 10. In the end, the town learned not to fight her. Generations of deaths, rituals, and whispered prayers proved what everyone already knew. The Mother of Ashes does not bargain. She does not forgive. She only waits. So the townsfolk stopped trying to drive her out. They built their lives around her instead, like settlers at the edge of a floodplain, knowing the waters will rise again, but planting anyway. Salt lines became as ordinary as doormats. Cedar smoke blended into the air like chimney fire, and every parent rocked their child to sleep in silence, lips pressed shut. No lullabies, no songs. They do not speak her name after sundown. They do not walk near the burn. And when another infant dies, they bury the body quickly, quietly. The graves are small, set apart from the others in the town cemetery, in a row that stretches farther than anyone cares to measure. Some say that's the truest ritual of all. Silence. No stories, no explanations. Just quiet resignation that the curse has no end. Because once a fire takes root in a place, it never really dies. It smolders, it waits, and sometimes it learns to walk. So the legend holds its ground, fierce as ever, kept within the borders of the town like a storm that never quite moves on. A black sky forever circling, thunder always rumbling low. Outsiders can mock, experts can explain, but here, in this town, everyone knows the truth. The Mother of Ashes is not gone. She has never been gone. And as long as children are born here, the burn will never cool.